Land use and sustainability. The objectives of this topic. First, to understand the history and importance of land use planning. Second, to understand some problems that arises in land use planning. The history of land use planning. The idea originated in Germany as Städtebau, or translated as the city planning. It was formulated to avert congestion due to the increasing population in towns during the Industrial Revolution. In the Philippines, all local government units or LGUs from the province, city, and municipalities are mandated to formulate its comprehensive land use plans, or known as the CLUPs. Land use planning is imperative because of the scarcity of land. Land use planning aims to find a balance among the competing and sometimes contradictory uses. The importance of land use planning. Land use planning is important to mitigate the negative effects of land use and to enhance the efficient use of resources with the minimal impact on future generations. The main objective of this planning process is sustainability, or to allocate land uses to meet the needs of people while safeguarding future resources. What is land use planning? It is defined as a systematic assessment of land water potential alternative for land use and the economic and social condition required to select and adopt the best land use options. It is also the process of regulating the use of land in an effort to promote more desirable social and environmental outcomes, as well as a more efficient use of resources. The goal of land use planning may include environmental conservation. Second is to restrain of urban sprawl. Third is the minimization of transport costs. Fourth is the prevention of land use conflicts and the reduction in exposure to pollutants. This is an example of a land use planning. So again, the planning process is iterative or cyclically repetitive and continuous. And the three goals are used to develop a plan includes efficiency, second, equity, and third, sustainability. Efficiency in the land use is achieved by matching different use with areas that will yield the greatest benefit at the least cost. The equity in land use focuses on reducing inequalities in income, food security, and housing. Sustainable land meets the needs of the present while conserving resources for future generations. Land use planning issues. Deciding on the proper use of land depends on the careful assessment of human needs and desires. Land has been equated with power, with establishment of personal identity, and with money. As a commodity in the marketplace, it has been a natural resource as a source of public wealth and a space for expansion. Tolerance for different points of view, coupled with apparently boundless wealth, has led people to exploit natural resources in the name of individual freedom. Many current problems stem directly or indirectly from the continued exploitation of a limited resource land price speculation. Urban sprawl, diminishing farmlands, and lack of access to public space. The prevalence of the automobiles has also intensified some land use problems. Land use affects other besides the owners and users. The next is to develop policies, programs, and legislation for our land resource that avoid or anticipate problems before they arise. Urban sprawl. Urban sprawl refers to the expansion of poorly planned, low-density, auto-dependent development which spreads out over large amount of land, putting long distances between homes, stores, and work, and creating a high segregation between residential and commercial uses, with harmful impacts of the people living in these areas and the ecosystems and wildlife that have been displaced. This results in negative consequences for residents and the environment, such as higher water and air pollution, increased traffic fatalities and jams, loss of agricultural capacity, increased dependency, higher taxes, increased runoff into rivers and lakes, harmful effects on human health, including higher rates of obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension, and chronic diseases, increased flooding, decrease in social capital, and loss of natural habitats and wildlife and open space, diminishing farmlands. Urban sprawl has absorbed agricultural land for commercial, residential, and high industrial development, while urban development converted mostly cropland, low-density residential development took an equal toll on cropland and pastures. Lastly, the lack of access to public space. Today, the urban growth eliminates accessibility to public space, and when public space do get created, they're often designed for the privileged and wealthy. The significant increase in hard surfacing and the reduction in green space led to higher temperature in towns and cities. Steps in land use planning. Step 1. Establish goals and terms of reference. Step 2. Organize the work. Step 3. Analyze the problems. Step 4. Identify opportunities for change. Step 5. Evaluate land suitability. Step 6. Appraise the alternatives such as environmental, economic, and social analysis. Step 7. Choose the best option. Step 8. Prepare the land use plan. Step 9. Implement the plan. Step 10. Monitor and revise the plan.
Steps in land use planning. Step 1. Establish goals and terms of reference. The planning effort is launched by discussion between those who want the plan, land users and government, and the planners. This crucial first step should be a mutual exchange of ideas and information. The decision makers and representatives of the people and the planning area have to brief the planner about the problems of the area and what they want to achieve. The planner has to make clear how a land use plan might help. A reconnaissance field tour, during which representatives of the people concerned are met, can be especially useful. Step 2. Organize the work. This step transforms the general planning procedure from step 1 into a specific program of work. It says what needs to be done, decides on the methods, identifies who will do it, specifies the responsibilities of each team member, schedules personnel and activities, and allocates resources for the ensuing step in the planning process. Step 3. Analyze the problems. After the previous focus on discussion, terms of reference, and preparation, Step 3 is the first to involve the detailed technical aspects of land use planning. It is a big step. First, the existing land use situation has to be analyzed and compared with the development goals. To do this requires the identification of land units and land use systems. Next, problems with the present land use must be identified, including their nature and severity. Finally, the causes of these problems must be analyzed. Step 4. Identify opportunities for change. The next step is to consider what can be done to solve or ameliorate them. This requires interaction between the planning team, which devises the presents its alternative opportunities for change, the land users who commit on these opportunities and may offer their own solution, and the decision makers who choose which alternatives are to be analyzed further. Seek a variety of solutions in the first instance, then select those who seem most promising. All reasonable solutions should be considered in step 4 because it becomes increasingly difficult to follow new directions and as planning progresses. It is important for the land users, planners, and decision makers to reach a consensus about what the priorities are, and this entails both public involvement and wide-ranging executive discussion. Step 5. Evaluate the land sustainability. This step forms a central part of land evaluation. Step 6. Appraise the alternatives such as environmental, economic, and social analysis. The effects of each alternative use are appraised in environmental, economic, and social terms. Step 7. Choose the best option. A good decision may be made by intuitively weighing the evidence that has been built up through the previous steps of planning. Step 8. Prepare the land use plan. The preferred option for change must be put into a form in which it can be reviewed and when approved, act on a specific land use plan intended to be implemented as a development project. It is principal way of doing this. However, depending on the level of purposes of the planning study, the results may be implemented as guidelines for priorities or by being incorporated into legislation, development budgets, agency programs, management standards, and extension programs. Step 9. Implement the plan. The objective of the entire land use planning exercise so far has been to identify and put into practice beneficial land use changes. Hence, implementation is included as a step in the planning process, albeit a step of a different nature. Implementation will often depend on a patient project management. The time, finance, and other resources devoted to it will often considerably exceed those of the entire planning process preceding it. Implementation involves many aspects that lie beyond the scope of the guidelines. And lastly, step 10. Monitor and revise the plan. Monitoring may be involved observation at key sites, regular extension visits, and discussion with officials and land users. A checklist and periodic meetings in the planning area may serve the purpose. Those responsible for plan implementation should list the tasks needed to correct problems as they arise and should also take action. There are a wide variety of reasons for failure. If the plan is found to be based on incorrect assumption, revision of the plan is needed.